The sun is back out and my depression is cleared. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Cameron. This is my cat. She's being a menace right now. But today we are going over all 19 books that I read in January. It was a very good month for me. I had a lot of free time, a lot of opportunity to get new books that I don't normally get. So I got a library card at the beginning of the year, which was one of my goals for this year. I got it, I think, on like the 2nd of the year, so that's one of like 10 goals I have checked off. Before we get started with like the monthly breakdowns, I think I'm going to talk about like some of the goals I set for myself at the beginning of the year. I think I talked about it in my very first like booktube newbie tag, I think, which that's on my profile. Feel free to watch it. I set 10 goals for myself at the beginning of the year, and I have already completed one of them, which was get a library card. I will be referencing my little reading journal, so you'll get to see more of that. If you guys want like a reading journal video, I am happy to do that for you. So comment down below if you're interested in seeing my setup, and we will go ahead and do that. Before we break down what happened in January, I'm going to tell you some of my yearly goals that I set for myself, and then just kind of do like a check-in on where are we with all of those goals. Number 1 was read more non-novels. I think I read a total of like 3 or 4 non-novels in 2023, which is kind of abysmal, but we're doing really good on that. I read a collection of essays this month, which I'll talk about, and I read a graphic novel. Read more non-novels is more like, don't pick a book that's like 300 pages of just words. So that can include like comic collections or graphic novels or essay collections or poetry or, you know, whatever. I did not read very much of that in 2023, so now that I've already got 2, I'm looking pretty good on that one. Number 2 was at least 1 nonfiction a month. I actually ended up reading 2 or 3 nonfictions, which we'll go through. I'll give brief synopses of the books that I read. And then one of my other goals was 1 classic per month, which I did read a classic this month. Number 4 was get a library card. That one's already completed. Pretty proud of myself. I'm not a New Year's resolution person, but I am like a reading goals person. So this is kind of my collection of like New Year's resolutions. Here are all the reading goals. I'm very happy with myself that I've already completed 1 of my 10 goals. Number 5 is donate/unhaul more books. I haven't gotten to that yet. I will have to like go through my collection to see like, I don't really want that one, because I only have a few books on here that I'm like, I absolutely don't want anymore. That'll probably be a later in the year goal. I'm sure I'll keep you updated on it. I don't think I unhauled any books last year, so that one will be a pretty easy goal to reach. Number 6 is primarily by books previously read. I'll go through probably my buying goals too. But that is true. I have found success in that. I have only bought books that I have previously read, so pretty happy with that. That's probably not going to be a checkbox that gets checked off until the end of the year. Number 7 is do not buy physical books from Amazon. I'm not including Kindle Unlimited and Audible. That might be something I try to let fall off as I use more of my library's resources, but not buying physical books from Amazon. So I can happily say I've not bought a single one from Amazon yet. Number 8 is read 100 new books. So this is really the only, I guess I have 2 number goals. I'm not trying to hit a certain number of books this year. I will read whatever I feel fit to read. I'm not someone who's like, I have to finish 200 books this year. But 100 books is an achievable goal for me. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to do 100 brand new non-reread books. And I got 16 this month. So we are right on track with that. I'm very happy about that, and I will be continuing to read more. So this is my other number goal. Number 9 is 50 new authors, and I believe 15 of the books I read were brand new authors for me. And several of those authors I discovered I want to read more of their work. So that is really, really good. I'm really happy with that. And then number 10 is one translated work a month, which I did complete. So speaking of, let's transition right on into January. We read 19 books in January, which I've already stated. But before I kind of break down a lot of those books, I'll tell you that I read 19, but I will only be discussing 17 of those books because of the current boycott of St. Martin's Press and its fellow, publishers under the St. Martin's Press title. So that is St. Martin's Press, Castle Point Books, Minotaur Books, St. Martin's Essentials, St. Martin's Griffin, and Wednesday Books. 2 of the books I read this month were from one of those publishing companies, and because we are boycotting them right now, I will not be providing any feedback about those books. I probably won't even be telling you that I read these books until the boycott is resolved and good to go. If you have any questions about that boycott or want to learn more, the Instagram account at Readers for Accountability has a lot of great resources of why are we boycotting St. Martin's Press, what are our demands, stuff like that. So I encourage you to check that account out if you want to learn more. So let me go over some stats. I'll go over the buying stats first, and then we'll talk about the read stats. Buying wise, I refer to this as my books received section because I did not buy all of these books. I did not even acquire them for my own collection in some cases. So I bought 10 books this month from either a local bookstore in Louisville called Carmichael's or from Half Price Books. All of them were previously read, so also very happy with that. Since last month was Christmas and all of its festivities, and January is my birth month, I got several gift books. So I got 4 books that were gifts, one of which I read. And then out of the books I read this month, 8 of them were library books. I've talked about this before. You guys know I'm obsessed with libraries. Use your local library for resources. Do it, because almost half of the books I read this month were library books. And then my little reading journal has graphs for the books I bought and stuff like that. So like I said, if you want me to make a reading journal video or a breakdown of how I do my reading journal, let me know and I will do that for you guys. I should also probably tell you the total amount I spent. The total amount spent, this is including my Audible membership and my Kindle Unlimited. I spent $94.24 at Carmichael's. I spent $48.19 at Half Price Books. And then the Kindle Unlimited membership where I am is $12.83, and the Audible membership, which is tied into Prime, is $15. This month I spent $170.25. That might seem like a lot, but you would be amazed. Last month I think I was going to the bookstore 3 or 4 times a month. So that is a significant and drastic cut that I am very proud of. So that is my books bought/received. Let's discuss kind of what I read this month. Like I mentioned, I read 19 books. So I read 3 audiobooks, so some of these stats do not include the audiobooks. But I read 5,873 pages. I read 57 hours total, which has kind of been a goal that I didn't necessarily write down, as I'm trying to read 50 hours a month because I'm trying to get to 600 hours this year. And then for the read books, I also read at a pace of 136.6 pages per hour. And then my best day that I read was 534 pages over 269 minutes. Of the books I read, 4 of them were digital, 3 of them were audio, and then the rest were physical. Mostly rented from my library, although I did have a few rereads. Pivoting back to the goals. So I have them on my main January breakdown page. They're right there. So I have my goal books. So my first goal was read at least 1 nonfiction every month. I read 3. I read so many fiction books last year that this was a big goal of mine. I really wanted to be able to read more nonfictions. That being said, I love reading classics. I've talked about this before. I only made it through 1 classic. My 1 classic I read was an audiobook of The Secret Garden, which I've never read before, but we'll talk about that more in its review. I wanted to read at least 1 translated work. I actually read 4. The first one I read was Human Acts by Han Kang, which is translated from Korean, I believe. And then I read the Inkheart trilogy, which is translated from German. Those are my gold books. Now I'm just gonna kind of go through and like break down each of the books and what I thought about them. Before we get into all the books I read, I want to talk about my rating system. So, the rating system I use is the Cawpile rating system. It is characters, atmosphere, writing, plot, intrigue, logic / relationships, and enjoyment. Basically, I take those categories for each book, I rate them out of 10, and then take the average of all of the areas, and that is my total average for the book. And then each star is basically an out of 10, how many stars this gets. So, when I talk about like the book average, like if the book average is 5, that generally means it's a 2.5 star. You'll see the pattern. I'm sure I'll put it up on screen. The very first book that I read this year was Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. This one ended up getting an average of 9.71, which is 5 stars. But yeah, I really started a year out with a bang. It's the story of a woman who is processing the death of her mother from a really, really gruesome illness. And it's also her kind of unpacking her half-Korean heritage and a bunch of stuff like that. Zauner is an incredible author. She's also an incredible musician. She released an album after her mother's death, just like processing that, and she's a really good artist, and I actually listened to her on Spotify. But she has such a way with words, like when she's talking it feels like you're there, and she does such a great job characterizing her parents and her partner and like everything that she's going through. Really, really good. This actually ended up being my favorite book of the month. 9.71 was the highest rated that I think I gave, and it tied with another book, which I will talk about in a second. The second book I read this year was from the library, so I don't have it, but I'll put it somewhere up on screen. It was Human X by Han Kang, which is a historical fiction about the student uprising in Gwangju. I'll put it on the screen. And it was told from a perspective of a young boy and everyone around him reacting to his death in that uprising. So a lot of different points of views, really, really good. It was also a historical event I knew nothing about, so it was really interesting to get to read it, even if it was from kind of a fictionalized point of view. But the author of the book lived through that, so she kind of firsthand saw what all was going on. She really did a great job. This was my translated work of the month, and I really enjoyed it. I think it was really, really informative. It was terribly sad though, so there's your warning about that. Human X has a total rating of 8.28 average, so that is about 4.5 stars. The third book I read this year was The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. It wasn't my favorite. It is a suspense about a really famous author who takes 5 young authors kind of under her wing and like hosts a writing retreat at her house, and like basically it's like, you guys are gonna write full novels in 1 month. I wasn't a huge fan of it. I actually ended up giving it a 5.71 average, which is about 3 stars. I wasn't that big of a fan of it. It wasn't for me. That being said, it's a good debut novel, and if you are a suspense person, then definitely go check it out. We Ride Upon Sticks, which is also a book I got from the library. It's over here. It is about a field hockey team that takes to witchcraft to start winning all of their games. It was very funny. I originally gave it 3.5 stars. I gave it a 6 average exactly. And some of my ratings will sometimes like go up the longer time goes on. Like maybe I just needed to marinate on it. But this book was super funny. I was very self-aware. It takes place in the 80s. So it's kind of a fun little historical fiction in that way. Looking back on it, I think I enjoyed it more than what I originally like rated it. Like I'd say now it probably comes to like a 4-star or higher. But all of the characters are very like, they could come right out of the page. There's lots of queer rep. There is lots of really funny moments. Like, the author chooses to personify things that are truly just so funny. Like, the captain of the field hockey team in the 80s, when they had these, like, big, tall bangs, the author names it the Claw, and it's its own character. It's very funny, which I really would like to get a physical copy of that. Oh, also, a great pivot. If you want to support me in any way, obviously other than the liking, commenting, subscribing to this channel, I also have kind of an affiliate link down below if you would like to get any of these books that I read. Absolutely no pressure. If you feel obligated, great. I use bookshop.org, and it's a website where you can order your books, and it supports small bookstores all over the United States. The fifth book that I would really probably like to buy for myself is a pretty political piece. It's called Freedom is a Constant Struggle, and it was originally written in 2016, so it's a lot about Black Lives Matter in the city of Ferguson, and it's about Palestine before the conflict that's going on right now. Angela Y. Davis, who is the author of this, has been a pretty prolific activist since the 60s or 70s. Like, she is very well known. She goes and talks all over the world about the rights of people of color everywhere, and she has been outspokenly pro-Palestine for years. She's really, obviously she's been doing this for a long time, but her speeches and essays are all incredibly thought out, and I thought it was a pretty quick read. It's only 178 pages. I was able to finish it in an afternoon. Really, really good. If you want to educate yourself kind of more about the situation going on and relate it to what is going on in America today, because there's also lots of discussion about the prison system in America, I definitely recommend you guys pick that book up. I want to say it's on Kindle Unlimited right now, so if you're a Kindle Unlimited person, you could get that. And of course, with essays, like with non-novels, it's a little harder to give like a star average, like a point average. You can't really use Copile on it. So this one was a 5-star read. It was really, really good. The next one I read was The Ballad of Perilous Graves, which is about a young boy who lives in New Orleans and kind of meets all of these spirits and has all of these special skills. It is interesting. It has very much the feeling of a Greek epic. So lots of really positive queer rep, lots of interesting kind of, I won't say folklore, but it feels like a big folk tale. I think this is also one that I've needed to marinate on, because I originally gave it 3 stars because I think the plot kind of confused me. I was having difficulty keeping up with the plot. But now that I've like finished it and had time to marinate it, it might go up a little more. That being said, it was a pretty neutral book for me. I just don't think it was for me. But if you're really into that, definitely check it out. There were definitely parts I really, really enjoyed. So the first audiobook I read in the month of January was Happy Place, which I actually ended up receiving this for my birthday. I read Beach Read last year, so I was familiar with Emily Henry, and I generally enjoyed that. I think she just got better with Happy Place. I think she is very much one of those authors that like gets better the more she does it, the more she publishes. All of the characters were super endearing. Emily Henry does a great job at making her romance books not just ooey gooey romance. Like, there is a lot of character growth in all of hers. And there were definitely some parts that were almost a little too relatable. Like, I got very choked up. Her average was 7.43, which is 4 stars. And unfortunately, this is kind of the case with a lot of romances, is a lot of the times I dock points for the plot, because so often romance plots are not super intense. But it does make up for the very low-key plot with how good the characters are and just like how much I enjoyed the book. The 8th book I read this year is The World We Make. I'll put it up on screen. Which is the sequel to The City We Became, which is a book that I didn't enjoy as much as I think I do now. It is one half of a duology. It's kind of an urban fantasy sci-fi situation. Now that I've read both of them though, I really enjoyed the story. It's written by a Black author, it's got lots of really amazing queer rep. I will be keeping my eye out for The World We Make so I can buy it and have both of them in my own library. The average for The World We Make that I gave it was a 7.14, which is 4 stars also. Also, I feel like I should say 3 stars is kind of like my neutral rating, so a lot of times we'll give that to books that maybe I don't feel are super memorable or maybe just weren't for me, even though like several aspects of the book were very good. So like a lot of the books that I gave maybe 3 stars will be ones that I like rated really highly in characters and plot, but maybe just didn't enjoy or wasn't that intrigued by the whole thing. If you hear me say a book is 3 stars, just because it wasn't for me, it could be for you. The 10th book I read this year, you guys know I'm a literary fiction girl. I had to get me one of those literary fictions a lot of people have been talking about, Cleopatra and Frankenstein, which is kind of a story about a 25-year-old girl marrying a 45-year-old man and just kind of them navigating through their relationship with the age differences and just her mental health issues and his alcoholism. I look back on it very fondly. It was not one of my favorite books of the month, but it's definitely one that I would like to own and have on my shelf because I did really enjoy it. It ended up with an 8 average, so that is right on the line of 4 and 4.5 stars. I think its standout was how the characters, because it goes beyond just Cleo and Frank, like it has a lot of other characters' point of view. All of the characters were really great and all of their relationships with each other were really compelling. The 12th book I read this year was Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe, which is a memoir about the author's experience with coming to terms with air gender and air pronouns. E uses air pronouns. It's a very introductory resource to learning about non-binary people and people who are genderqueer. And I do think I was a little beyond the level of understanding what they were, which is why this book only got 3 stars with a 5.43 average. By no means was it a bad book. It was actually a really well done graphic novel. I did feel like it was pretty base knowledge on genderqueer people though. But if you want to look for introductory resources to being trans or being non-binary or anything like that, this is a really great book. Number 13 was my classic, The Secret Garden, which somehow I've never read before. I don't know how. I know it's like a children's classic. But I listened to the Audible version with Carrie Hope Fletcher narrating, who I love. I've been following her on YouTube since I was probably 12 years old. She is a great narrator. The book itself was so sweet, and it's a super easy read. Like if you just wanted to turn something on while you were cooking dinner, this is a great one for that. I actually ended up giving it an 8.43 average, which is 4.5 stars. Right after I finished that audiobook, I read the audiobook for First Lie Wins. Here's the thing right here. This one had some really great twists in the beginning, but it wasn't really able to hold my attention after that point. Like several of the twists were really good, and then we hit like probably the last third of the book, and I struggled to keep my attention on it. It ended up getting 3 stars with a 5.57 average. If you guys haven't already figured out from the last video I did, which I'm sure will be linked somewhere, might be up in the top corner, might be on the end screen, I did reread the Inkheart trilogy. I was really in the mood to reread a childhood favorite. It still holds up. It's still very good. It ended up getting a 4.5 as a trio. When I reread a series, I just rate the entire series in one go. Now, if it's a first read or something, I'll rate them individually, but it's easier to just put them all 3 together, specifically since it's a reread. It ended up getting an 8.57 average, which is 4.5 stars. If you are a book lover or a fan of fantasy anyway, I really recommend this trilogy. Alright, we're getting into the final 2. The 18th book that I read was Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. I really liked this book. It is about, not necessarily a victim of a serial killer, because she was not hurt, but it's about a president of a sorority when 2 of her sisters are killed and 2 of her sisters are mutilated by a serial killer. And it's about her, like, going on and, like, trying to figure out what happened and all sorts of things like that. One thing I really, really liked about this book is they never said the name of the serial killer. They called him the defendant the entire time, which I thought was so important, especially with, like, society's obsession with serial killers. Like, not many people can name even one victim of, like, Ted Bundy. So I really, really liked that it was from the perspective of people who were hurt by a serial killer. It follows 3 perspectives throughout the book. It's that sorority president, her name is Pamela, in the, like, the day it happens and the several days following it. And then it's Pamela 50 years later. And then it's also one of the defendant's victims named Ruth. So you get to follow, like, Ruth's life up until her death, which was very compelling. The only complaint I really have about this book is occasionally the older, like, I was a little confused why the older Pam's point of view was there until the very end. So it all comes together. But yeah, I ended up giving this an 8.86 average, which is one of the highest rated of the month, with a 4.5 stars. And then the final book of the month, which was also tied with Crying in H Mart as my favorite. It also got a 9.71 average. It was The Princess Diarist by Carrie Fisher. I am shocked that I never have read one of Carrie Fisher's books, because she is an incredible writer. Really, really funny, whip smart. She is one of those authors that I'm definitely like, if I can find one of her other novels, I will be snatching that up and I will be reading it. The Princess Diarist is chronicling her filming the first Star Wars movie. Looking back on it 50 years later, a big part of the book is the affair she has with her co-star, Harrison Ford, but a lot of the diary entries from when she was 19 are put into the book. So you kind of get to read exactly what she was thinking. She also, a lot of this book is talking about, like, her relationship with the character of Princess Leia. Maybe I'm a little biased because I'm a Star Wars fan, but I really, really thought this book was well written, and I don't think you need to be a Star Wars fan to understand it. Like, it's primarily about, like, how do you go on living when you were an icon? Excellent book. It's tied with my favorite book of the month. Rating-wise, I do think Crying in H Mart edged it out a little, but I did put Crying in H Mart as my favorite book of the month. I started the year out really nicely. I had some really good selections. That is all for today's video. Thank you all so much for joining me. I had some really good books this month. I'm very proud of it. Like I mentioned, I did not talk about 2 of the books I read. Perhaps I will bring them up at some point, but keep definitely boycotting St. Martin's Press. Go educate yourself a little further on what is going on there. If you enjoyed this video, of course, like, comment, and subscribe. My bookshop.org affiliate page is updated, so you can find any of the books that I read this month down in the link below. And if you want to buy yourself a little book that helps you out, you get a new book that helps me out a little. It also helps out local bookstores all over the United States. I am on IG as @BirdsBooks. I am on TikTok as @CamBird. I post every day on both of those, so if you're interested, go check it out. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you all have an excellent day. Go support your local library. Get yourself a new book. And I will see you all later. Bye!